All right. Good morning once again, everybody. Happy Tuesday, May 5th, 2026. It is Cinco de Mayo day, so happy Taco Tuesday. Before we begin, again, regulators require that I display the disclaimers associated with trading. As you all are well familiar with, NFA Compliance Rule 2-29C, subparagraph 1. Past performance not indicative of future results. Hypothetical results have a lot of inherent limitations and yada yada yada. Okay, to quote Seinfeld, could I read it aloud, please, in full, in stereo? Maybe another day, but not today. All right, good enough. All right, let's see what we have on deck for us today. Today is a cycle day 2, and we had a normal cycle day 1 yesterday. As you can see here on the left, let me just open this chart up a little bit. All right, so you can see we had some swings yesterday. There was some uh, news releases about Iran shooting off some missiles over into the UAE. There was no, as far as I understand, there was no casualties related to that. They were able to shoot them down, but again, it clearly demonstrates that Iran still has capabilities there. And of course, the ceasefire is still technically underway, but with some minor incidents there through the Strait of Hormuz. Again, I'm no Henry Kissinger here, so um, but we do read price, and that is our main forte. So we'll stay with what we know best. So let's take a closer look at the charts, see what may happen here today. Cycle day 1 low was put in place, as you can see. Again, so yesterday was a normal cycle day 1 decline, establishing a low at essentially 72. We had 72.25 on our radar yesterday, and again, the way I like to look at this in terms of my levels that I outline is I'm looking for prices to, reach those zones, right? So remember, all our levels are plus or minus 5, potentially even plus or minus 10, depending upon volatility, right? But just keep in mind that that all the levels that I'm citing, it's a zone rather than just a line in the sand, okay? But what you typically will get a lot is it'll reach a zone or level, and then you'll get kind of a flush to the upside, to the downside, right? So creating a tail, right, or a wick. Some people call them wicks. They are wicks, right? But again, I call them a tail. But it doesn't matter what you call them, as long as you understand what they are, right? So essentially here, prices, drove it down, and then at the end of that 60-minute period, right, prices closed higher, so leaving an excess, right? Some people also call that an excess. Uh, Excess low, right? So flushing out some longs, that type of thing, right? Okay, so then as you can see yesterday, when it reversed, again, it held that that wick. And then as the day and then this was late in the afternoon, and then it kind of bounced up and then kind of stalled into the close. But nonetheless, the close was in the lower 25 percentile, right, of the day's range. So it was fairly weak. So one of the coming into today, so from the overnight, one of the scenarios could have been a retest. Okay, so kind of looking at, when we're preparing for the next day, I look at what's happened obviously in the prior session. Where did the price close in terms of the range? And, trying to assess what the potential is for, in this case today, cycle two, potential retest of the cycle day one low. Okay, which again, it's a scenario. So what you want to do in your preparation is prepare various scenarios. So you're not taken by surprise by anything. The whole goal here is not to be surprised, is to be prepared of as many variables that you can. But we're particularly somewhat kind of binary. Like, if it retests the low, would I be surprised at that? Certainly not. Okay, if it holds the close and rallies, would I be surprised at that? The answer should be no, right? And if you are flexible enough in your thinking and open-minded in that the market will do what it wants to do, not what I think it should be doing, though we can prepare scenarios as to the potential for one um, scenario versus another. Does that make sense to everybody? It's all in the way you're thinking about it and preparing, right? So if you're preparing and you're saying, well, yeah, the market can go higher, it can go lower, we logically know that. But the idea is to be, okay, so if the market goes higher, what would be some of the scenarios to look at? Well, one would be, well, how about if the market holds the closing price from the prior day? What would that suggest? Right? So let's just say you're early in the evening here or the next day, and price is like right here. Right? It hasn't rallied as it did, as you see on the screen. But you see it here and you're saying, okay, where is this price relative to the close? Well, of course, we observe, right? It's part of the observation orientation, right? The OTA loop. Well, it's above the close. Okay, I see that I've observed that it is. What would be the read through of that? Right? And Barbara says here she would read through as some level of strength. Okay, again, at this point in time where I'm pointing here, right? So, okay, so now with that, take it to the next level, right? You start thinking, okay, so if it's demonstrating some strength whereby we're not getting any trade below the close and everything is above the close, right? Then you start thinking, well, what would that suggest in terms of the lean? Okay, I mean, maybe this is just so fundamental, but but sometimes, again, the fundamentals, the basics, um, often people overlook because they want to get to the good stuff, right? But frankly, the good stuff ultimately are the basics. But they're boring. They may be boring, but every professional athlete, I can assure you, all right, at the top of their game, what are they doing? They're practicing the basics. As a matter of fact, I was watching an interview last night. Ram had passed it over to me. Ram, if you want to post that link for Hedgeye into the room, that would be great. So I was watching this video interview with one of these trading psychologists, Gio Valente, and one of the segments of what he was talking about was Tiger Woods and how Tiger Woods would literally spend hours upon hours practicing the basics, right? And it turned out of, I forget the number of putts from a certain distance, I don't know, call it 10 feet, 2,000 putts. Was it 2,000 putts, 3 footers? He missed how many? Two or three? Two. There you go. Okay. So that kind of struck me because that hit a chord because one of the things in our members area are two videos called part one and part two on deliberate practice. And if you haven't watched those in a while, you really should spend some time. Deliberate practice. And I simply use the example of Michael Jordan at 3 a.m. in the morning at the free throw line throwing, right? Thank you, Ram. Throwing free throws, okay? Kind of an unlimited ball feed, right? And that's just practicing the basics. And so what does that do to you? Because in the championship, when there's no more time on the clock and he got fouled and he's up at the free throw line, just like Tiger Woods, out of 2,000 putts, he missed two. So, when the money's on the line, right, having done those basics repetitively, boring, pays off in the end. So how does that relate to trading, right? Again, go back to module number one, pivots, the basics, review those, really get to understand those, understand how price action unfolds. Everybody wants to try to get to the quote unquote good stuff, but you can't get to the good stuff unless you master the basics. All right. So, and then again, I think people tend to forget the basics quite a bit. So it's good to go back to the basics quite often. All right. So I know it's boring to talk about, and I don't talk about it often, but I want to outline that and really suggest, you know, think about going back to the basics often because it's in the basics that everything else, all the so-called good stuff, is formed from. Okay, so that's my little missive this morning. And again, why am I talking about this? Because I watched this video that Ram just posted up, right? Keith McCullough over at the Hedge Eye. And by the way, Gio Valente here lives here in Fairfield County. All right, so uh, right nearby to where we are. I don't know the gentleman. I know who he is. I've known him for years, but I don't know him personally. But really, really good stuff. So, anyways, see what you can take away from that as it relates to trading. But bottom line is master the basics because when the proverbial X hits the fan, you're gonna want to go back to something that you can fall back on and really rely on. And what can you rely on? The basics, right? Not the so-called good stuff, but really the basics. All right. Yeah, Gio Valente of, I think that's how you pronounce his name. All right, good enough. So let's have a good session. Just since everybody's here, again, programming schedule is I will be out tomorrow. Okay, day off for me tomorrow. I have a traveling appointment I got to go to, so I will not be hit. I will not be in, but the charts, I will put the charts up and leave them running. Well, actually, I'm not sure about that. I got to think about that. But I will definitely be out tomorrow. All right, and I'll be back on Thursday. So that's the schedule. All right. So when you see me not here tomorrow, you're wondering, that's it. That's the reason. Yeah, Randy Howe's really good as well. All right, let's see what we can get accomplished today. Again, it's being a cycle day two, normally we would be looking for some rotational action. And even though the market is, has rallied somewhat overnight here, um, again, it's not necessarily a trend, although directionally kind of looks like a trend up here, lean at the moment. But within the context of everything, it's really kind of you got this move down and it's kind of a counter move to yesterday, right? But nonetheless, the lean right now is to the long side. And again, we'll be patient, wait for some pullbacks to some levels. So you again begin to frame out where your pivot levels are. Do everything you need to do, right? So I'm going to frame out a pivot over here, this zone, put your rays, put your rectangles, whatever you need to do. And then we'll maintain vigilance on um, direction. All right. Barbara, Nicholas had, I don't know if you saw Nicholas's question um, related to the YM, but check that out. Oh, you answered them already? Okay, terrific. Thank you. Nicholas is new with us and he trades the YM. All right. Very, very good. All right, short of crude oil this morning on the opening. That did hit target one. And pre-opening here, pre-RTH, we had a discount on the ES that hit target one and stopped on the balance. So we'll just continue to maintain the long lean. So at this point, the next kind of target levels to be shooting for would be the prior open and prior high, which equates to the 72, 75, 80 zone. All right, so long bias, looking for discounts, pullbacks within the context of this up move. All right. Yeah. Wow, a day off. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, it's not the type of day off I really want, but it's one of those must day offs. Trust me, I won't be sitting on the beach tomorrow. I have a meeting I gotta go to. ES. Show ES targets. Oh, I'm sorry. On the opening range. Yeah, I'm sorry. All right. Here we go. I think those are all of them. Yeah. Here we go. I gotta get it to auto scale. I gotta figure out how it auto scales. All right. So again, retesting the prior open yesterday, 72, well, near to the 72, 75, 76 area. Again, if you're looking for a long on the A10, all right, you see where the A10 is around the 60s. All right, so keep a watchful eye on that if you're looking for an A10 type of long, if that's part of your playbook. All right. Again, discounts are been working out so far early. Crude, I have it in June. Crude oil. Uh, CLM, Mike, Mike. CLM. Yes. We're in sync. It's called Cinco de Mayo. We're in Cinco de Mayo. 10 a.m. ISM and Jolts. Yes. Job openings. Slow grind. So yesterday, oh no, not yesterday. I'm sorry. 2 days back. Is it 2 days? The first. First was Friday, right? Yeah. So 2 days back, price has reached uh, a value area, point of control area from Friday. So if we take a look at the, again, it doesn't mean it can't go through. Just for reference here. Okay, again, just kind of knowing the lay of the land. This is an RTH session chart, right? Not full session, right? RTH um, profile. But you can see here, this is today right now, and this was Friday. All right, and you can see here point of control. So just kind of know where you are on the map, right? Doesn't mean it can't go higher. Doesn't, because you can go do it at once. It's just the idea is what would you anticipate, kind of in that point of control zone from Friday. Possibly a little slowing down. Doesn't have to. Just saying, you know, again, we're trying to outline what the potential is. Okay, prices have reached a prior known level. Is this something I want to be super aggressive on the buy side or not? Again, not trying to predict what's going to happen, but just saying, price is at an inflection point. Okay. So again, if you're not looking back at the prior days, right, you ought to be always taking a look at where price is relative to, uh, known prior levels and zones. Okay. It just kind of gives you some context. That's all. So, and all of a sudden, if we see that the market has stalled and reversed, and then you're looking back, geez, I wonder why it stalled and reversed. Well, that could be a reason that, the buyers just kind of dried up there. What would the buyers need to do now since we're at the prior zone point of control from Friday? They're going to need to eat through that area, right? To move it higher. So again, kind of asking the real-time question, is the demand greater at this point into a prior known heavy trafficked zone? And so again, we're measuring what's happening now versus what has happened in the past. Make sense? These are the type of questions and again, if you're trying to read the market, from that perspective, I mean, if you're 100% mechanical on everything that you do, then there's not much to read. There's not much to assess. You just let the computer do the job, one way or the other. But I don't think that's how everybody here is, right? So, you know, but again, doesn't mean you're making the final assessment. Okay, it's reached a point, it's going to reverse. Whoa, no, that's predicting. Don't want to do that. But knowing where, price is, geez, price rallied, where, when you say, well, if price rallies, where could it rally to? Okay. So yes, we typically look at the prior session, but be sure to not just focus on the prior session, but other sessions as well. Again, looking for prominent areas, areas that stand out, and then say, okay, well, the bulls are here. What do the bulls need to do now? They need to continually eat through whatever potential supply is here, right? When I say potential supply, that's all it is at this point, right? It's potential supply. Just know that there was a lot of traffic in this area back on Friday. All right, but right now the lean continues to favor the buy side, and there's no reason to be thinking shorts. Regardless of where price is, we're just using that area as a reference from Friday. Hey, we're back up to Friday's point of control. Okay, that's it. That's all I can say about it. We're back up to a known area. What's happening now, though, in real time versus what happened back on Friday. All right, we're back up into that area. Well, what's happening right now? Well, the buyers are still hungry, right? Pac-Man is still eating, right? We can look at it in an order flow. You know, buyers are still aggressive. And that's how you take the bigger picture and you start drilling it down to where we are, where price is, and then that way you stay in alignment with what's happening, not what you think should happen. Such an easy formula, is it not? I don't know. All right, so that said, but again, we would not be surprised if in this area buyers dry up, their demand gets fulfilled, and sellers turn a bit more aggressive. We would not be surprised that that unfolds. Yeah. Is it fair to say? Is Spygate working? I don't know. I don't know. All right. Hmm. All right, let's take a look at, let's pull over the opening range for the recording here. So we have crude oil on the right. Again, short on that. First target has been hit. Stop now is in place for NQ up top left. Long, first target fulfilled, stop in place. ES kind of the laggard here. Long as well, but not anywhere near the first target. So we need a little love on that to move higher. But that's the opening range at this stage. All right, not much more to assess at the moment. Again, we got our 75, so we're into our initial target zone, or the next target zone rather. 75 into the 80 level, as we highlighted there the other short time ago. One thing to be thinking about, again, I don't want to just keep repeating the same old, but you see the fair value zone where, right, this zone here where the multi lines are equidistant lines. Um, if you're thinking about an area, if the question mark comes up in your head, geez, where can I buy? Where can I buy? Right? Well, you kind of, you can always identify areas, zones where it's, again, a little bit more favorable to enter, right? So right now, since we call this the fair value zone, not fair value gap, like many people, think about, oh, that's a fair value gap. No, we're just talking about it's a fair value zone. Fair value zone means to us is that it's the most average price zone based on what we do, how we view it, right? It's the most average price zone. So the idea then is if price is above that zone, say it's up here, right? You kind of know, well, if price comes back down into this area, this would be, your buy zone, right? So you already can identify zones. We know the direction is up. So, but I don't want to buy them up here above the zone. So I'll wait for price to come back down into the zone, right? Now, what we don't know, none of us do, is whether or not that zone at that point will respond and give us a good buy, opportunity. But we do know that it is a buy zone area. Okay. Does that make sense? So you can always identify where buy and sell zones are. It's just whether or not, you kind of like, oh man, I missed this buy into this zone, right? And then starts moving. Oh, I gotta chase it, because it's going to the moon. No, you gotta be patient, gotta wait. And that's why it's important to recognize that once we get the initial shifts, again, we got initial shifts much, much lower. We can still enter these zones even though they're not the first shift any longer. There is still, I mean, you got to constantly assess the current rhythm, right? So, any of these pullbacks were at the time still viable to take a trade. What's the worst case scenario if you bought one of these on a pullback? What would be the worst case scenario? You get stopped out, it didn't work. Can you accept that? Do you view that as a failure of executing your plan? Again, you'll have to answer that for yourself. But again, to increase the odds of success, you really do want to focus on, those first sequences of pullbacks. Perhaps as you get further along in the move, you still take those trades, but maybe not as heavy or as aggressive as the first couple. That again could be another way. Or position sizing. Maybe you're a little bit lighter on position sizing a little bit further down the line in a move versus the early stages of a developing move. See, all these things have you asked yourself, have you considered, do you totally want to sit on the sidelines? Again, that could be a play for you as well. All these things, again, ultimately need to be assessed beforehand, because when it comes to the heat of the battle, uh, you're going to be less likely, uh, again, the decision that you're going to be making has to be in real time, right? And so you need to know exactly what you're going to do, how you're going to do it in advance. Otherwise, that ever so slight bit of uncertainty is going to creep in, and your body's going to go into protection mode, and it's so much easier not to take the trade, right? Because you're staying safe. And that's all the psychological stuff and the preparation that you got to go through. All right. All right, slow grind, slow grind. Not much else to say. I will say that though, the rhythms do change seemingly daily. When they get you corralled into one rhythm, they like to shake it up. Shake it up, shake it up. All right, 10 o'clock. What do we have at 10 o'clock? We have new home sales, Jolts, ISM, could be market movers. Looks like slightly higher numbers on the Jolts. I don't know. I can't read it. I'm not a analyst. I don't know what how impactful those things are. Above my pay grade. Oh, I read something the other day. It was yesterday. Does anybody remember? Possibly not. Maybe some of you do. But do you remember when Intel was having some financial difficulties? I don't know exactly what year, not too long ago, but they are having some financial difficulties. And I think it was during Trump's first term. And Trump went in and made an investment in Intel on behalf of the United States. It wasn't necessarily a bailout, but it was some sort of financial backing or something. Does anybody remember any of that by chance? John does? Okay, John B. So it's interesting because apparently, yeah, so apparently with Intel where it's today, uh, Trump, when I say Trump on behalf of the United States, has like a $48 billion gain in owning Intel stock from some sort of financing that they did a number of years back. Right. So compare that. Notice again, I don't want to get into the media, but notice nobody's mentioning that. Whereas the other administrations purchased all these solar places that went defunct and lost, hundreds of millions from those so-called investments. So, but it was interesting because I was like saying, you know what? I bet you most people don't remember that the U.S. made an investment into Intel when it was struggling, and now that they've come back, nobody's talking about the type of uh, gain that the United States. So you can just read through that the way it was just interesting because I was just seeing uh, Intel on the tape here. Yeah, TDS, and it's just kind of when I was reading something here on Intel, it just kind of sparked that recall in my head where I heard that. I don't know if I heard it yesterday or the day before or read it, something like that. But that chart's not coming through, Tom. Yeah. Yeah, there's somebody here in the community, not in PTG, but the overall Mr. Top Step community. I'm not going to mention his name, but I do know that he had a pretty sizable investment himself, and I think right now it kind of has an unrealized gain of like close to $1 million on it. So it's just kind of cool. It's always nice to hear the good stories. All right. So it was hanging in there, hanging tough near the highs. Again, the prior high is 79.75. And again, the buyers are just continuing to, eat at whatever, available supply is, right? So that's the idea when I was mentioning earlier, even though we're prices at a known level from Friday, that does not mean it's going to reverse. It's just a reference of, hey, okay, prices back up to that area. Now let's see what happens, continuously happens in this area. So there's basically two concepts that you want to constantly be, assessing. Is the current price action accepting these prices, or is the current price action rejecting the current prices? Acceptance or rejection. Keep those two concepts in mind at all times, when price is moving around. Is it accepting an area or is it rejecting an area? The longer it stays in an area, the greater uh, inference that that price zone is being accepted by those people trading, right? So you can see as the market continues to kind of move up, we're not getting any rejections whatsoever. No sense of any rejection. Yeah, a little minor pullback. A pullback is not a rejection. So we get a little pullback, and then, but not enough where the sellers really want to smash it. And so the inference or the read through is that, well, these areas, these levels are getting accepted. Well, if they continue to get accepted, then that's a green light for you to continue looking to buy these pullbacks, right? Even though they may be somewhat shallow. So we were talking about coming into the fair value zone, right? And then looking for a move up. Well, in order to do that, you already need to have been thinking about whether or not are these prices getting, are they being accepted or not? It's all about the thought process. Because if you don't have the proper thought process and come up with some, type of answer to support what is happening, you're not going to lead to the type of trade, you know. So, all right. All right, there's the 80s target that we outlined. So 80s fulfilled. Crude oil now lower, hit its targets. Let's bring the opening range back again. All right, so you got the crude oil here on the right fulfilled its targets. NQ had already fulfilled this target one, stops in place, continuing to move potentially higher. ES finally beginning to make its move. 83.63, 83.50 is going to be the target there on the opening range ES. We keeping you on the right side? That's what it's all about. And what's the password for this month? Alignment. Surprise, surprise. I will say, and I will admit, and I think everybody would agree, it's easier said than done. That's why a lot of people, um, I won't get into that, but it's easier said than done. All right, so what's next? I don't know. If we get an extension of this range now, again, we fulfilled the range, prior range. So if we get a further extension now of that range, what are your targets? What are the potentials? All right, so here on our screens on the left, we have 90s, we have 95s, which is the cycle day 2 penetration level. And of course, we have the money box above that. Okay, so those would be objectives, further upside objectives. Not necessarily in a straight line, but those would be further upside objectives. Now, on some sort of dip, if we get it, where would we be looking for renewed buyers? Right. Well, at this point, somewhere back down near 70s, perhaps. Why? Because that's where we had some consolidation, right, in this area. So you can see the kind of the hump of volume in here. So if the buyers kind of dry up here and the sellers come out, we'd be looking for some sort of a pullback down into this area perhaps, and then maybe a renewed buy point, you know. Again, just trying to outline it, scenario, that's all. Trying to be prepared for that. It could continue to grind if it wants, but we would not be surprised if we get a pullback, would we? Nope. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Well, golly. Well, gosh damn. All right, we'll see if we get some sort of a bounce. Whether it's a bounce or a trounce. And again, we've seen this often, so often lately, is when the market's made such a move and then it pulls back to the 810, it just cuts through the 810. It's just, because it's made such a big move again. But we'll see. Today could be different. All right. Recency bias is tough, makes your head twitch. But again, would not be surprised at the cut. I wouldn't be surprised at anything. But again, there's your 70s that we just mentioned. Again, this would be the potential for the market to kind of snap. So if the buyers are still around, again, they've already paid as high as 80s, 83s. We'll see if we get some love out of this. Looking for love in all the wrong places. Come on, Seabiscuit. I don't have a skill yet. Do I? What's going on here? Oh, okay. Get sure I'm out. Holy moly. Look at that. Just again, this cell program just came in and slammed it. Bottom, bum, bum, bottom. Yeah. Uh, yeah, on the ES, yeah, it looks like it was open range stop. Yeah, let's see if yeah, it got stopped. Yes. Wow, that happened quick. That was about as close as you can get. Let me see the executions. Get it. Okay. Did fill. Didn't look like it though. Two, two. Oh, there it is. Hmm. Yeah, air defense systems. That's why they knocked it. This is what happened yesterday too, when the UAE air defense systems went on alert, intercepting some missiles. They dropped it quick. You know, it's funny how they come up with these, moves, right at certain inflection points, right? Was it the UAE announcement of these missiles, or was it the fact that price was at the prior high? Okay, what was it? I don't know which one it was, right? But it was certainly, you know, again, they also can use this to they can also use this to try to, knock it down and buy them, right? I mean, they've been buying them, buying them, buying them, right? So, hey, let's knock them down. Let's see if we can buy them on the knockdown. Get some people to panic out, right? All right, so regardless, buy side is still the active side. All right, don't get waylaid because of that. Obviously, these moves can happen fairly quickly when announcements like that occur. All right, but again, nothing that should be freaking us out in any way. Just part of the game of playing futures. Sam says, what I heard was Israel set up the Iron Dome in the UAE. Yeah. Also, I think there was an announcement yesterday, again, something about the UAE um, purchasing like 8 billion versus in military weapons and stuff, more defensive weapons from the US. I think that was the case, something like that. All right, well, the A10 is working out, so we're going to move our stop up. If you traded any of that and you got stopped out, accept the stop and move on. Right? If you weren't in it, that's fine too. But again, if you are in it and you know wherever you place your stop, and if you were to get stopped out, they missed our stop here, right? But if you got stopped out, accept it and move on. You know, these type of, quick announcements, there's no way, the only way you can guard against it, if you think you're going to trade them, think again, right? They can work in your favor, but it seems as though, anyways, most times they don't work in your favor, but they can. Um, it just seems that way that they don't, that they don't. But in any event, you can't, you're in a trade and, something like that hits, you just got to have your protective stop in. There's just absolutely nothing, did you do anything wrong? Did your system not work out proper, right? None of that. None of that. It's just that, stuff like that happens and, just move on. And also thinking about that, right? Moving on. I know we like, we want to review and we want to be critical, of performance or lack thereof. But really, in order to move on, what do you need to do to move on? Anybody? Not a rhetorical question. And what do you need to do to move on? The answer is in the question. What do you need to do to move on? Right. Okay, that's why I said the answer is in the question. What do you need to do to move on? Move on. Forget about it. Forget about it and to move on. You just move on, you know? Yes, you can go back and assess, but, move on. I kind of related to my airplane, okay, and flying. In an airplane, there's only one direction, forward. There's no reverse in an airplane. Well, unless you're in aerobatics, but you can do a tail slide, but I'm not talking about that. But but it's just forward, right? But what can you do in an airplane and still go forward? You go around in circles, right? You're still going forward, are you? But you're going around in circles. So, you can go around in circles using that analogy, or you can just keep moving in the direction, no reverse. So you can go back and do a post-mortem, but don't hang on to the post-mortem. Just move on. These are things in your mental toolkit that I think could be very helpful. Let me do something here. What do I want to do? I want to remove plan on entry. Yes, there we go. And then just wait for the next, core trade setup. That's the goal. Right? Stay in alignment. Take the trades that match it. When you get something like crazy that just happened with just let it play its thing, and then regroup and then move on. Uh, 51, 670 minus 52,000. All right, so the next level, if you're going to be interested, is going to be on the if you're going to play the short side, will be against the D level, right? The A10 just got stopped on the trail, so that worked out nicely. Forget about it. Hmm. New home sales came out earlier. Soared for the second straight month. All right, so let's do this. All right. All right, we'll flip over to our 3-minute chart over here on the left. You can see our OTA loop matrix grid here on the left. Pretty well all green on the way up there this morning. Forget about it. Yeah, we're in the moving business, not the storage business. Absolutely. Two men in a truck. All right, my spidey sense here is I think we'll go into some sort of a range um, pattern now. On that ES opening range, that's just an order is placed that has not triggered yet. Um, by the way, the long did get stopped out, but the short is staged with no trigger at the moment. All right, so just to make that clear on the opening range. So bring that in on the for the recording here. You can see again crude oil on the right, targets fulfilled. NQ top left, first target fulfilled, stops in place. Um, and then on the ES down below, bottom left, the long did get stopped, hadn't reached the first target, just missed it before that announcement came out about the missiles. And then the sell order is staged over here below the low. All right, but hasn't triggered yet. All right, so that's the skinny on the opening range. All right. Anything else? Anybody have any? Anybody else have anything? I don't. All good. Steve, you cut out at 11 each day, is right? Is that still the case? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so these morning sessions that I'm recording probably work really well for you as well, right? And again, we're only recording till about 11 Eastern time every day. Yeah, so on days you can't hear you can't be here, you can do a quick review and kind of stay in a line, stay in touch. Yeah, that's what I found. We got a lot of, we have a number of folks, that are members that are not actually present. Sometimes they cannot be present in the room actively. So we have a couple airline pilots, right, in the community, but you know where they are, right? They're in the cockpit. And but what they really what really like is that we're recording, the morning sessions. All right. Not that they obviously can't do anything, to trade that, but what they do get is, they learn vicariously by watching what we're doing, what happened during, that morning session. Um, Obviously, my commentaries, seem to be helpful, and and then they can apply that to their own trading, as well as my daily recaps. Is there anybody kind of follow the daily recaps as well from the daily trade strategy? But it's really the recaps of the room at the end of day. Okay. Um, Obviously I use, AI to generate some of the imagery, but I direct, what I want on the recap. But a lot of it is just it's taken straight from the room, commentaries, your commentaries, your postings. I include that stuff in the recap, and so that's why I try to, it doesn't pick up the audio here. Maybe at some point it will, but that's why I try to follow up postings, oh, my audio with postings, and no, but my postings are there really are designed to for the recap, not as an immediate actionable notification for anybody in the community to do something. Okay, because number one, there's this you're gonna be late. I'm posting it late. I'm more likely posting what I've already mentioned live, but I'm posting it for the recap for those that can't be with us. All right, so as long as you kind of, everybody understands the format, um, it's there for educational purposes. It's not there to call out trades. We all know that. But again, for those listening in the future to this recording, that needs to be reminded of that everything here is for educational purposes, right? And all the good stuff per the disclaimers that are required. So, okay, I said it. I don't usually say that all the time, but again, I'm being prompted to remind everybody of those things, and that I don't often speak of those. So I apologize in the beginning for those, but that is kind of what's necessary. Just as a reminder, and I know everybody here is well attuned to that, but we are in such a litigious society that, you know, I will say to my, and I don't want to say this too loud, right? Knock on wood. But I will say all the years that I've been doing this, okay, I've never had a serious complaint about anything, an actionable complaint. Somebody, got maybe pissed off because they couldn't get into the room, or they canceled because they couldn't get into the room, or something happened, or you know, uh, really somewhat out of my control. Maybe the platform, something, and then they get, you know, impatient, and then they quit. Okay, you know, um, but yeah, so I I kind of pride myself that, I do things the right way, don't hurt anybody. You can come and go. Technically, my policy is a no refund policy. It's stated on the website. No refund policy, and any refunds are at my discretion. But I've had somebody come in, he thought this would be a good place, and he was here for maybe 10 days, and he wrote me and he said, I thought this would be a fit, but it turns out that it's not. So I'm canceling. He didn't ask me to refund him. I refunded him anyways, minus minus the fee that I have to pay to PayPal. He had to eat that. But I refunded him, and he was like, wrote me back and says, "Wow, that's amazing. You didn't have to do that." I said, I know I didn't have to do that, but you're only here 10 days and you said it's not a good fit that you thought it would. So what do I want your money for? If it's not a good fit, you know, take the money and go find a good fit. So that's just the way, and again, that's how what I do stuff. That's why I'm here for how many years, you know. But a lot of people don't do that out there. They just say, they'll just take your money, you know. Yeah, rare to get a room fee refund. Well, I mean, I even prorated. So if somebody's been here for, say a month or so, and it just something happens. It's not that it's not a good fit, but something happens in their life, you know. Again, you haven't used the service, right? You've prepaid for a service that you haven't used for. So just prorate it to what you've used. Again, not stated in the policy. None of that is stated in the policy, but it's just, you know. So, anyways, just the way I like it. You know why? I can sleep at night, do the right thing, sleep at night, you know. Running a business, yes, but not looking to take anybody's money if they're not using the services as intended. All right, we're coming down to the wire here for the time. Where did my? Oh, here it is. Anybody have any questions, comments, considerations before we end the stream? We got about 5 minutes roughly to ending the stream. Like I said, I think the market right now, my spidey senses, we're going into some sort of a two-way balancing consolidation period, up at these highs. All right. Again, we could still push higher. Bulls remain in control. Okay, up at the highs, they do remain in control. I think it would need to take, if we were to get some sort of a kind of key reversal unfolding, keep an eye out on VWAP, right? The trailing VWAP over here, we're currently right around 66, 65, right? The developing lower value area right there, right? So Again, if some sort of a reversal unfolds, we would start seeing some level of weakness, kind of below these levels, right? If we get a pullback to these levels, by the way, right? If you get a pullback down here, that's not necessarily going to be a shift, right? So, what we're looking at or considering is balancing up at the highs. So when we talk about our sandbox, right? So right now we can even still use the developing value area as our sandbox. All right, so staying within the context of that doesn't mean it's a hard line in the sand, soft line in the sand, but just a representative of edges. And should the market come back lower, and retest the lower edge, okay, I would be looking for, a kind of a PKB, right, style trade, a look below, right, fail reversal. Look where all the amount of activity has been taking place recently. So that becomes the high volume area. A magnet, lots of two-way trade between the bigger institutions and so forth, right, in this area. Right. Again, trailing VWAP underneath becomes, potential support point area, just pointing out these things. So if we get a, rotation down, again, you're looking for kind of a reversion back up. A little bit more cautious, perhaps, to the upside, but if you do get a push higher at this stage, right, be looking for the D level. So let me just show this. You can see it on the left side chart. But I think it's still on here, right? Or not? Oh yeah, right here. So let me just put this on the execution chart here. And again, it's the same price level, right? The 90s up here, so it's D level here. So if we get, didn't get, came close, but not close enough. But if we get a move up here, right, you would be looking for, remember, right, accept or what? Reject, right? So if it comes up here, the first instance, I would be looking for some type of a rejection, i.e., we could place a short. Again, not a prediction, just an outline. But again, keep in mind if it let's just say it gets to this level up here and it doesn't really reject hard and it kind of stays here, okay, then for some period of time, then that usually indicates that it may wants to go higher, right? But again, play it out. If you're D-level money box in your playbook, play it out how you wish, right? So again, just kind of trying to put some outlines for you on things. But right now, Bulls remain in control, and that's it. All right. So I'm going to end the stream here. It's 11 a.m. I'm going to end the stream here, an hour and 45. That should do it for us today. And remember, tomorrow I have a traveling appointment, so I'm not quite sure whether or not the charts will be up and running. I may decide to shut everything down. If somebody, though, would like to share their charts tomorrow in replace of myself, let me know, all right? Because we can get Marlon to authorize chart share. It's really easy to do. So if somebody's interested in doing that, it's not often that I'm out for a day, but tomorrow I do have to be out because I will be traveling and just not going to be back in time. So if anybody is interested in that, let me know. Otherwise, we'll see you back on Thursday.